Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for not just Wild Card Weekend, but Super Wild Card Weekend. As the playoffs get underway, we're going to get into some of the latest coaching vacancies and coaching carousel around the league, with Black Monday being this past week. We're also going to get into each game on the slate this weekend and a little bit of playoff best ball strategy. Let's start the show. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. We got the playoffs up ahead of us. We've got some coaching vacancies to get into. We're also going to get into some playoff best ball as well. Mario has a great article up on the RotoWire site breaking down some good strategy, whether he agrees, disagrees with some of the ADP forming in the best ball markets over on Underdog and DraftKings, all that. But Mario, the greatest coach ever is no longer coaching. I mean, Nick Saban, but I suppose Bill Belichick also. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to parse between the two. I think you could have both of them on their respective Mount Rushmores for pro and college, and probably for just coaches generally. The Saban retirement yesterday really threw me off.
It's a lot, man. I'm kind of I'm in shock, I guess. Like, I'm just kind of not processing any of these things because maybe it was I guess for me it was more the Vrabel one, but because I was already I was like blindsided so much by the Vrabel one, when I saw the Saban one and all the other ones too, really, I was just kind of like, this just feels like a fever dream or something.
So when the news broke on Saban on Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, I was out on a walk with my girlfriend, and my phone's just exploding with like group texts and all this and that. And we get back from the walk, and I just look her dead in the eye, and I'm like, I got to go on the internet for a while.
I have to post. Dude.
Yeah, I gotta get some tweets off, and I did. Nick Saban and Bill Belichick have caused me immeasurable amounts of pain, but I have immeasurable amounts of respect for both of them. I think they're both just unbelievable competitors and just so pragmatic. So like the body of work for both of them just so unbelievable. And it's funny, with the magnitude of those two no longer in their coaching positions, it sort of took some of the magnitude away from Pete Carroll, also not being retained by the Seahawks. And then, of course, like you said, Mike Vrabel, the other coaching movements were either expected or already made, obviously, with Carolina doing what they did. The Raiders,
even the Pete Carroll one, I was like, I can see why. I get the point of him being kind of nudged out. But yeah, the Vrabel one, it was just like, what the hell are we doing here? Like, why is this allowed? Can someone stop this owner from doing this? But the cool answer is you never can, because they were born rich and now they get to do these things.
Exactly. And I think one of my favorite items that to come from this week and from that move in particular, what was, and I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially the Titans management and ownership, they felt like it would have been a little bit too much work to trade Mike Vrabel. So it's like, that sounds like a lot of paperwork. We're gonna go ahead and just fire him. That seems easier.
I think, to be fair to Ryan Carthon, who's I believe the GM in name, I assume it was him, because I guess I don't know who else is around with the team anymore to issue this comment, but The Athletic, I believe it was, their applicable beat writer, sorry, I don't know his name, had some kind of word from inside is that the owner just did this. Like, it was like she just had a knee jerk, as like rich, angry people do oftentimes. Like, the second something doesn't go their way, to them, everything is just an issue of pushing a button and getting what you want. And they think it works the same in all cases, which it doesn't. Managing an NFL team, that it's politically more sensitive than that. But yeah, her feeling is like, I should be able to push a button and get whatever treats I feel like I should be entitled to. And in this case, it's like push button, get good team. But since it doesn't work that way, she just pushed a button and fired a valuable coach and got nothing for it, leaving her GM not just without a viable coach at the short term, but it's going to be harder, I think, to get Slowick, for instance, from Houston has been floated as a name for the Tennessee Titans. Why would Slowick go there now? Why the hell would anyone go there now? If you have to go between either Tennessee or Carolina, why not just wait until next year entirely? There's no reason to take those jobs.
Especially in Slowick's case, where you build another year of credibility. You have another year of CJ Stroud, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and the offense is probably gonna potentially reach another level next year, and then you really get your pick of the litter as far as job openings go. So to your point there, you're almost sealing your own fate in a way by going to one of these more lower desirability job openings like a Carolina or now like a Tennessee, because Vrabel really made chicken salad out of chicken this year. I mean, between
I never heard that one, but that is true.
I mean, like the roster is not good. Like we bemoaned it every single week of the season. We talked about how there's nothing really on this offense except the odd week where Will Levis would sneak up on somebody or the defense would forget to account for Derrick Henry, that type of thing.
That offensive line was probably one of the worst of the past 20 years.
Yeah, we smelled that out in the preseason. We're not even big preseason takeaway guys, but we saw their game against, I think it was the Bears early on in the preseason, and they ran the starting unit out there, and it gave up a ton of sacks. I don't know if I'm misremembering, and it was the most sacks allowed in a preseason game ever, but that was a little bit of a sign that things weren't going to go particularly well for Tennessee this year. Maybe, if you look back a little bit, the trade of A.J. Brown a couple of years ago, and then thinking that Treylon Burks could basically just step right in and be A.J. Brown 2.0. Maybe that was the start of the decline.
Firing the Titans, GM made a lot of sense. Yeah, firing Vrabel is trying to find that GM to fire him again, and firing Vrabel because he's the nearest person nearby now. It's crazy. That Amy Strunk lady, apparently the owner now of the Titans. It's really a lot like the scenario in 30 Rock where Don Geis's daughter became in charge of whatever the General Electric or whatever their company is. It's like she's just there and kind of thrashing about, and they're trying, her handlers are trying to get her under control, but too late. She fired Vrabel already.
Oops. So Tennessee, it looks rather bleak, especially if they're unable to lure Slowick away from Houston. Do you agree with the general sentiment that the Chargers are the best job opening?
Well, they got to be better than the Panthers and the Titans. I'm not sure what kind of standard we're setting with just that, though. I'm a Herbert believer. I think Herbert and some of the pieces they have on that team make for a quick start. It's definitely an easier rebuild, for instance, than what Houston had with what they were looking at in March. But Houston was an example of playing everything absolutely right and in a daring fashion. So it's not easy to turn things around like that. And I don't know if a good coach, if I guess Ben Johnson were to go to the Chargers, I'd be like, oh yeah, that should work fine. That could be pretty explosive. But if it's the Chargers, if the question is more are the Chargers talented enough for sort of just anybody to go in and make a noticeable difference? I'd say no, especially because we don't know what this new GM arrangement is going to be. We also don't know what that person is going to reshape this roster as, because they got to blow up. There's something like 5 or 6 contracts that must have 160 million between them, not even including Herbert. The guys what the hell? It's Mac and Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. These guys have numbers that just clearly, at the very least, were going to be renegotiated all along. Even when they signed those deals, the whole plan for the team was we're going to, this is going to be funny money. So they have a lot to figure out, and therefore they have a lot they could kind of make worse too, but it still has to be like the Panthers not having a first overall pick that they gave away in the process of giving away their best player that they had before that, and then wasting that pick for the player that they got out of it all. That's kind of this pit has never existed before in the NFL as far as I can remember. Like, this is a worse situation than any expansion team ever dealt with.
Yeah, it's truly the Marianas Trench that has been formed there in Charlotte. So gonna take a while. Probably the next coach is just gonna hopefully get them a little bit closer to sea level, and then probably get canned, and then the next guy down the line will be the one that maybe gets Carolina back to being competitive. But till then, things are looking pretty bleak in Carolina. And yeah, to your point on the Chargers, they do have a lot of cap issues, but we'll see if that really matters, because when you're the head coach, generally you don't have to worry, or the cap isn't so much your concern as getting your guys ready for Sunday, and you have the best quarterback of any of the jobs that are open with Justin Herbert, obviously being locked up for the next few years. So that I think is probably enough of a carrot for them to be considered the best. And then beyond that, any other leans or observations on these coaching vacancies before we get rolling into the games?
I don't know. It's not the same subject exactly, but it is shameful and awful what Doug Peterson did with the Jaguars, firing guys like Bernie Parmalee and Caldwell, the defensive coordinator, but not firing Press Taylor. That's just there's a few words for it. None of them are good. It's a bad look for not that Shad Khan needed more negative indicators, but certainly a bad look for him that he oversees this all. And it's enough reason for me to say, like, you know what, as someone who thought Trevor Lawrence would have this chance to break out as, like, Megatron of quarterbacks, in the event that he were given kind of just baseline NFL coaching, that possibility I am rapidly losing the hope of seeing anytime soon, at the very least another year, because if the Jags come back with Doug Peterson and Press Taylor, they're just going to suck. Crap team. Also, the Raiders should just be ended as an organization. They should be deleted and maybe replaced with some other team. I don't know, but not just hiring Antonio Pierce is totally disgraceful. It's what is it? It's a lack of, like, graciousness or something. It's ingrate behavior. Awful. Whoever gets Antonio Pierce is lucky. Whoever gets a Ejiro Evero is lucky too.
Yes, I did see that. I think the Falcons are poking around on Ejiro Evero, and I will say, credit to you. You usually are a pretty good weather vane for coordinators who are on the come up and should be able to be considered legitimate head coaching candidates, and you've had that, on an otherwise completely unremarkable / terrible Panthers team. You would always make a point to say, you're zero. Like, he's doing.
Well, that's all because that's because of that whole Nate Hackett season that was so cool. That was that year with Nate Hackett and the Broncos. Ejiro Evero was the defensive coordinator, and they would have had a winning record or whatever if they had just scored 17.5 points per game. That's because right. Ejiro Evero kept opponents to 18 or something like that.
For whatever reason, I forgot that was him. I don't know if in my mind's eye, I still thought it was Fangio, but Fangio was the head coach, and then he got fired for Nate Hackett. So I needed to do some data management in my brain. Anyway, folks, we're here to talk about the playoffs. So we're going to do that. But first, a message from our friends over at Circa. Get ready for the ultimate big game parties at Circa Resort and Casino. Super Sunday is in Las Vegas this year. Watch the big game poolside at Stadium Swim's Big Game Viewing Party. Massive screen, booming game sound, and a view of the pyrotechnic and visual effects throughout the game. Snag the best seat in the sun with daybeds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more. Or touchdown at the world's largest sportsbook, Circa Sports, for the Big Game Bash. 3 stories of football glory featuring a 78 million pixel screen. Book your seat with a variety of reservation options, including bottle service, open bar, stadium-style food, and more. Don't miss these legendary viewing experiences on February 11th. The big game parties only at Circa Resort and Casino. Reserve today at circalasvegas.com. All right, Mario, let's kick things off with the Saturday afternoon slate, or the time slot, the time slot, which whenever the Texans make the playoffs, this is theirs. They're the kings of being the first game on Wild Card weekend, and fitting that they are back in that spot. The Texans are 2.5-point home underdogs to the Cleveland Browns. Would not have expected that coming into this season. But no, the Texans are your AFC South champions. I had forgotten that I bet on that at some point in October, and I was happy to see that my account got credited for that. So all good there. But beyond that, your expectations for this game, the Browns obviously been rolling in the second half of the season. Them being here is really a testament to Kevin Stefanski. It's unbelievable what they've gotten out of Joe Flacco, signing him and getting him off the couch to all of a sudden, making the Browns offense completely explosive. What are we expecting here?
Well, it's not the easiest game to call. I don't personally, jump to one team over the other. They both are credible playoff teams, I think, and they both have certain unique traits that make them memorable in different ways. But as much as I kind of want to take the Texans, and as much as I think DeMeco Ryans is a much better coach than Kevin Stefanski, even though Kevin Stefanski has done a good job this year, and I guess also, to be fair to Stefanski, maybe he just needed this particular type of personnel group to really hit his own stride, and that's weird if so, but whatever. It seems like it might be happening, and if so, that's a bad timing for the Texans. With one of those unique strengths of theirs is actually in their front four on defense, and all year they've had really good run defense, even though aside from maybe Denzel Perryman, they don't have anybody among the linebackers who really profiles as the kind of guy who can anchor a run defense. It's like this defensive front seven cohesively was very effective, and that's interesting to me too, because those 4 down linemen are more like one gap types, aside from maybe Sheldon Rankins. Like Malik Collins was a situational pass rusher with the Cowboys. Will Anderson is a 250-pound defensive end. Jonathan Greenard's the same kind of thing, and yet they're so tough to run on. And in this case, Will Anderson, Jonathan Greenard, the 2 defensive ends, they haven't practiced as of today. Malik Collins and Sheldon Rankins are both managing their injuries, so they're going to play for sure, but they're not themselves. So if Houston got here in part because the run defense was so good, and that detail is not present in this matchup, that's a concern, especially because the Browns' offensive line is probably one of the better ones in the league, and I don't think Kareem Hunt can really do anything. But when you have an offensive line advantage, pretty much anybody who's in good enough shape and talented enough to be on an NFL roster at running back at all, like, they can capitalize in a situation like that. And yeah, I think Jerome Ford is clearly a pretty good player. So at the very least, he, I think, will be effective, or like pose enough of a threat here that the Texans defense has to sort of take it seriously, and maybe in the process they'll leave open something in a play action look, be it to Njoku or Cooper or whoever else. But if the offensive line of the Browns can't sort of carry their offense here by just kind of bullying on the ground game, then I would worry a little tiny bit, just because I think Derek Stingley is awesome and Steven Nelson has done a really good job with the Texans too. So those two, if the pass rush has any life at all, could be challenging covers for Amari Cooper to get open against. But if I have to call it one way or another, I think Anderson and Greenard being hurt is a huge issue for the Texans. And I think with that offensive line, maybe Cooper doesn't get open immediately against Derek Stingley or Steven Nelson, but if Joe Flacco has 5 or 6 seconds to throw the ball, he will eventually. And I think over the course of the game, the Texans kind of just get, I don't want to say pulverized on defense, but I think you'll see them looking a little bit out of their element in the second half.
It's crazy to me that the Browns' offensive line remains a strength and an advantage in this game when guys like Jack Conklin, DeJuan Jones, Jedrick Wills are all on injured reserve. But
it's crazy.
They've just built a ton of great depth.
I didn't realize DeJuan Jones is still out. Who's even playing there?
It is by the looks of it, one James Hudson.
James Hudson. I guess okay. He played for them a little while ago, didn't he? I thought it was going to be a name I'd never heard of, but I think he must have played a little bit. So he's got some experience at least. But yeah, that's crazy to be down to your whatever cumulatively like dual third string offensive tackles and still be getting pretty good results. Maybe I'm wrong to think it's an advantage. I mean, maybe actually Will Anderson and Greenard are the people with an advantage here, but I still go back to the theme of the Cleveland run game eventually getting going, taking some anchor, because Will Anderson is a 250 pounder. So is Greenard. The tackles playing hurt. I don't know. I think they'll be able to get the run game going at least.
That's obviously huge, especially if they're able to build that lead. Is there anything from their recent matchup back in, I want to say week 16, that might be informative for this one? Obviously, Amari Cooper went ballistic in that game, but I don't think has played since with that heel.
Well, it seems like Cooper is okay.
Right.
I just I don't really want to try to take things away from previous matchups too much, just because it's like teams find themselves at different places and, with different objectives throughout the year. It's like one team in a game like that could be more prioritizing kind of staying healthy and not showing too much for a divisional game in next week or 2 weeks. And the other team might have more at stake in that one game and it might show up in the box score. But in terms of just personnel interaction, there's a lot of strength on strength either way. Like I guess that Cooper play is a great example. It's like he had the biggest game of his career against the Texans, but I don't think this is an easy matchup for him. Like that kind of wacky stuff can happen. The 2000 Ravens can give up 47 points in week 1 to the Jaguars or whatever happened, and then still be the best defense ever. So the Stroud factor is tough for me from the other side. And I even think Devin Singletary might be able to run a little bit against the Browns, and in a way that the Texans kind of need him to, because I just don't think they have the pass catching personnel. That's a big part of it too. Like not just the defensive injuries, to have only Nico Collins as a like game ready NFL receiver right now is a major hindrance. Like I think Collins will still probably have a pretty good game, but if CJ Stroud needs to throw the ball 40 times, it just starts to get sketchy, because it's like, what is Collins going to do? Get 22 of those?
Yeah, we're getting into Brandon Marshall territory at that point.
So yeah, it's weird stuff happens, and I don't want to bet against Stroud, Collins, Slowick. I think all three of those guys are legit, but it's just like, I don't know. It just seems a lot of strength on strength, and one of these teams is a little bit more beat up at crucial spots, I think.
Yeah, and the public tends to agree that as far as spread handle for this weekend, this is the most lopsided game. We've got 79% of the money coming in on Cleveland -2, 72% of the money coming in on the Cleveland money line as well. So everyone seems to believe that Cleveland is the team that's going to advance out of this one. And I tend to agree. I think Cleveland, if not for like the divisional stipulation, would have been a higher seed in the playoffs, and I don't know. They are, in my view, top 3 team in the AFC as far as the playoff field is concerned. And Houston just, I mean, not that there's a ton of playoff experience on this Browns team, but Stefanski's been there. I think that this will just be step one in what ends up being a huge career for CJ Stroud. But I think it starts with a playoff loss.
Also, hasn't Flacco probably played in more playoff games than it's probably like 5 times as much as all the Houston players combined or something like that?
He's played in, I want to say 15. I think he's 10-5. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a playoff experience does matter, especially probably if you're the traveling team. So yeah, I don't want to count the Texans out, but it just seems like the Browns are in a bit more fortunate of a spot timing wise.
I would say so as well. Let's get on to Saturday evening. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Miami Dolphins. Chiefs 4.5-point favorites in this one. I think that line has moved a little bit over the course of the week. I want to say this started out, yes, as Kansas City -3. The Dolphins just, Is it them getting figured out? Is it them being too banged up, or is it like just a factor of them having to go on the road against a good team, something that they haven't done or performed well in that type of situation over the course of this season, and this also being a game where it's going to be totally frigid temperatures for a team traveling from Miami that fuels some of this line movement?
All of that stuff is concerning for the Dolphins, and I know Jalen Phillips wasn't Mike McDaniels' fault, but losing Bradley Chubb was kind of like the door shutting on that team. I think even if Waddle were fully healthy, which he is not, even if Mostert were fully healthy, which he is not, that was just a back-breaking sort of thing to have happen. And it's hard for me, having felt that way the second it happened, it's hard for me to look at this game and see it from any positive angle for the Chiefs. Like, Tyreek Hill could have a monster game and the Chiefs could still cover by the Chiefs could still win by 2 touchdowns or something. That admittedly is not so easy to project with this particular version of the Chiefs, and their own passing game has been bad enough in warm weather that as much as they are the home team and as much as it seems like strong-armed quarterbacks do a lot better with Arrowhead than finesse passers. Like, I keep mentioning this, but Phillip Rivers really struggled a lot against the Chiefs and at Arrowhead, and he was more of like a shot put kind of passer. Like, he doesn't have like the wrist flick, elbow flick kind of velocity that Patrick Mahomes certainly does. Other guys who have done well at Arrowhead lately are Justin Herbert and Josh Allen, who have comically strong arms. Tua, in this sort of environment, even before you add the cold, I worry about some just real awful dud throws happening, and that's even before I even ask who the defense is, and it's not all rosy there either. Like, as much as Tyreek Hill has probably the upper hand against almost any corner, including L'Jarius Sneed, it's one of those things. Like, again, Tyreek Hill has 14 targets for 120 yards or something. Waddle's 2.5 weeks into a return from a high ankle sprain. I don't think we're going to get more than 25 snaps out of him, and he's not going to look particularly good on those snaps if it's a real high ankle sprain. So is Cedric Wilson going to be getting open against I guess he could beat those outside corners, but you're going to see Snead or McDuffie on Hill with probably as much help as Spagnuolo can figure out how to give him. And then you're going to see the leftover of Snead or McDuffie on Waddle, and Wilson is the only person at that is Wilson's more realistic as a target at that point than Waddle. And that's just such a bad point to be at too. Again, no matter what the venue or the context, that's a bad just matchup indicator for the Dolphins that your second leading usage. What's that?
2 words for you. River Craycraft.
River Craycraft, Braxton Berrios, Chase Claypool, I guess. I'd certainly be. They need somebody to just. I'd send them out there to do cartwheels down the field. I don't care. Just somebody who isn't slow. Go out there, please. Anyway, I think it's a bad spot for Tua, and it's one of those things. I worry about it even if Waddle were fully healthy. The fact is, some teams have some teams' numbers, and then even the thing that gave them, even the trait that gave them the advantage in that context is something that makes them weak in another. And you saw it with McDermott against the Dolphins. Both times it's cool in a way that Tua Tagovailoa gets rid of the ball so quickly, the league leading rate. But if you're getting rid of the ball that quickly, categorically you are emphasizing some parts of the field and omitting others. And if you're dropping back 1-2, getting rid of it, you are not throwing deep that much. You're dependent on the intermediate, the shallow, probably over the middle of the field a little bit. And Mike McDaniel, in the games where the Dolphins are really cooking, they clear out that area successfully. They get Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle the ball in that part of the field successfully, and they do a lot of damage after the catch. Right. And the Chiefs have the kind of personnel, just as the Bills do, to spam those depths, to sit in the parts of the field that you necessarily have to throw the ball to if you're getting rid of it as quickly as Tua does. And they're ready to play that kind of game. It's not an uncomfortable thing for them. The way you make the Chiefs more uncomfortable, and same as the Bills, is going downfield. And I think in both cases too, it's getting the running game going, getting the safeties pulled downward a little bit, making those corners, instead of playing that pouncing on the intermediate game that they're allowed to play, make them turn and run. And I don't think the Dolphins have like the infrastructure, the personnel to do that. I think they have to, they keep getting rid of the ball really quick. I think the Chiefs are going to be jumping those routes.
So this is a more of a comment from Sunday night's game against the Bills, a loss that, kind of, you mentioned the Bradley Chubb injury against Baltimore, but, that losing to the Bills the way that they did, kind of effectively ends their season, because I think they're dead men walking coming into this one. But I don't mean to sound overly harsh of Tua, but when they got the ball with a chance to tie the game late, at any point did you feel like he was going to actually do it?
No, I don't think he's very good. I know it's this has been a bit of a hot topic, whatever, controversial thing, because there's the debates on Twitter about like, is Tua Tagovailoa a precision passer or an anticipation passer, or is he just a system passer? And the answer is he's all of those things. I mean, we say in a sometimes joking tone that quarterbacks don't matter, but it's truly the case that outside of a few, 4, maybe 5 quarterbacks generally don't matter if they're not in that awful category. It's like the space in between is what makes most of the viable quarterbacks in the NFL. And in that group is Tua Tagovailoa. And given the proper structure in place, he can be a league leading passer, an MVP candidate, a guy who can, shoot it out with any offense in the league. But if those systemic details are not sturdily in place, like if some of that structure starts to fall apart, so does he. There's a category of quarterback that doesn't fall apart quite as fast. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, in my opinion, Lamar Jackson. I don't personally think Josh Allen is there, but I can see why someone would say he was. Tua is not in that group. Tua is in a group where he's like, he needs a specific setup, and it's not going to be there in this game. It wasn't there against the Bills, and it wasn't there against the Bills, I think, because of for personnel and strategic tendency reasons. It's not like it was a fluky thing. It's not like the Bills just have a magical curse on Tua Tagovailoa. It's like they're good at things that he more so depends on defenses to be bad at.
So, with this in mind and our kind of general skepticism of how the Dolphins are going to function on offense, especially with the passing game, is there any way that McDaniel just kind of, in the weather conditions, maybe helping him come to this conclusion and decision? But I mean, Miami had a totally killer run game this year. I know it's not.
It's the only way. It's literally the only way. They have to go Oregon Chip Kelly out there, or they don't stand a chance.
So do you think that they might actually do that? Do you think McDaniel reaches into that part of his bag and kind of maximizes the ground game? Because the Chiefs, for Spagnuolo and his ability, especially in the postseason, that's well known, but the Chiefs didn't necessarily have a great run defense this year. So do you think that that's the only path for Miami to get this done?
I think it's the only path for Miami, not so much pending the matchup details as much as just like the fact that Miami doesn't have the personnel to compete against anyone any other way. But you're right, the Chiefs are tougher to throw on than they are to run on. Some of that is by design choice, because Steve Spagnuolo, understandably, is designing his defense with the vision of playing defense with the lead, oftentimes in shootout scenarios. So that's the kind of defense that the Chiefs are built to play. But the way you get any angle on that kind of defense is, well, then give them the script that they're not built for. They're not built to stop the run in a close game. So try to make the game short and keep it on the ground. And hopefully one of your incredibly fast running backs gets you an unlikely big play. And hopefully that big play gives you position on the scoreboard to sort of dictate the game script a little bit. Put the Chiefs in situations rather than be in the situation of always catching up to whatever they started, and if only because they don't have the pass catching ammo to do it, the Dolphins have to go through the ground. And I think you're right, though. I mean, we've already seen it, and we don't need a Denver game. We can get literally like a third of the Denver game, and that's enough to make the Dolphins probably win, let alone make it a tough game for the Chiefs. But yeah, if Tua needs to throw the ball more than like 27 times, I think this actually could go the other way. Like if Tua starts to throw into the cold and the wind and with the defense sitting back ready to jump his passes, they will. and that could get ugly.
Yeah, it absolutely could. So I want to see a lot of Mostert and Achane. If I'm a Dolphins fan this weekend, I do think that's their path forward. And then, on the other side, we've kind of touched on it briefly with the Chiefs offense taking, a pretty big step back this year. I still think that they're built to at least win this game. And then, they're just dangerous with Patrick Mahomes back there, but it's not as good of a passing game this year as we're accustomed to, obviously. Do you think on the Chiefs side of things, especially with those defensive injuries for Miami, they got worse last week, mind you, with Baker getting hurt. I believe Andrew Van Ginkel also got
left
injured in that one.
Mm-hmm. Howard left, and that's been called as like a bad. I don't think that's actually a bad thing. He's always getting roasted whenever I pay attention. But the Van Ginkel thing, I didn't even because he was basically like he was the next up after Phillips. So he's on the
yeah. So
that's bad. Yeah, like they got do they even know? They must. Melvin Ingram and Justin Houston are going to be the starting edge.
Yeah, they've had to dip into that pool. But all of that was a long preamble to say, how rosy is Isaiah Pacheco's projection this week?
All right, so this is a little complicated, I think. Short fields would really help. Some turnovers off of the Dolphins' offense. That's the kind of stuff that I think a little bit of momentum at their sails would help, but at the initial outset of this game, I feel like it might be a bit of a stalemate because as much as Chubb and Jalen Phillips are really good, were having great years before they got hurt, and as much as Van Ginkel was also effective, and losing him hurts a lot. The real anchor and engine of this Dolphins defense is Christian Wilkins, and I didn't even notice Zach Sealer's got 10 sacks now. That's crazy. So those two playing defensive tackle in most packages, I guess they're going to have to give Raekwon Davis more snaps than usual if the Chiefs are testing them on the ground. But even with Raekwon Davis being a liability, Wilkins is Wilkins is on a Hall of Fame kind of course. I don't know how many people have noticed that, but he's been crazy. He's probably the closest thing to prime Aaron Donald in the league right now. And he's playing like crazy. Sealer's playing like crazy. So if those two can keep the linebackers, if those two can both occupy gaps and press back, and the linebackers can capitalize on that, maybe the Dolphins can keep what has been an effective run defense going in this game, but it might take a little selling out against the run. And I don't know. I don't know if Vic Fangio is that specifically built for the game today in general. I don't want to act like he's some kind of foremost authority at this point, but if he doesn't make run defense a priority here, I think it could blow up in their faces. And I can understand why someone would be like, oh, we're going against Pat Mahomes at Arrowhead. We have to, kind of spam the pass. Since we last saw, the Chiefs can't actually throw on anyone, right, let alone Arrowhead. They couldn't do it against the Raiders. Maybe you shouldn't assume Mahomes is what you need to worry about most here. Maybe the Chiefs have run and designed such a poorly conceived offensive strategy for their passing game that actually Isaiah Pacheco is your biggest concern. The issue there for the Chiefs, in my opinion, Pacheco, if you're hoping he can go over 20 carries in a game, it's asking a bit of him. The way he runs, he burns up, he burns up energy fast, and he takes a lot of
the Chris Ivory corollary.
Yeah, and even more ridiculous because Chris Ivory and Isaiah Pacheco share the trait of just kind of going headfirst, face bashing into the defense, no matter what's in front of them. What Pacheco does that no one has ever done is that thing where he always has to move like he's the ring girl, like he's always got to he's got to have what do you call it? He's got all these joint movements that look like irregular and unnecessary, and he's just doing all this moving around and spending all his energy. And it's he's obviously a really good player. It's just that he kind of I've pointed this out about Jalen Warren. He runs at 125% effort off the bench. Isaiah Pacheco runs with 190% effort as a starter, and it's there's a reason this guy split carries at Rutgers.
Yeah, no, exactly. Let's see. I believe the ring girl's name, Samara. Does that sound right?
I don't know. I was too scared to watch that whole thing. I was just she's getting out of the TV like Isaiah Pacheco. Scary.
Yeah,
turned it
off. That was quite an era. That one, The Grudge. Oh yeah, Had some nightmares about those in back in middle school. But either way, Pacheco, if the Dolphins don't come correct against the run here, it could, kind of end up sealing their fate a little bit. Where do you land on this game overall with the Chiefs being 4.5-point favorites?
I got to go with the Chiefs because I don't know. I think that, like you said, the Dolphins have a path on the ground, but it takes a certain focus and discipline and understanding of your limitations for Mike McDaniel to agree with us. And maybe he does, but even if he does, it's a narrow path even still. It's like you need those 40-yarders to hit. These are the two right running backs for that. But if you let if the Chiefs score a touchdown on their first drive and you let that force you into like a catch-up script as the Dolphins, it's a wrap right there. And yep. I guess I see that as more likely than, the tightrope of Mostert and Achane combining for 40 carries and 300 yards. Like it's a way it can happen, but it's not a good, most likely way to win,
My big concern for this game, it's on Peacock. I'm visiting my grandparents this weekend. I'm going to have to set that up for them. That's my only concern for this one. That's going to be a Titanic struggle.
Godspeed. Don't change any settings of theirs.
No, I'm pretty sure they have a TV that works for streaming, but
they like it.
We'll see. It's still got the tube TV. All right, we will move on over to Sunday's action. We've got the final AFC game. We've got the Steelers. We got the Bills. We got the Bills as 10-point favorites in Orchard Park. Steelers, by George, they made the playoffs again. But once again, they kind of really since like 2016, I want to say, like the Steelers have made the playoffs a decent bit in that time frame, but at no point have they looked like actual Super Bowl contenders, and that continues this year. They are the biggest underdogs on the board. They are 10-point underdogs once again, and I believe they do also have far and away like the longest Super Bowl odds. So not a lot of belief from the sports books and the public that the Steelers are going to make this one competitive.
Yeah, I often don't know what to think about the Steelers in terms of matchups. Their defense is kind of tough to figure out. Their offense is simple enough, I guess. It's not very good. And Mason Rudolph might be quite a bit better than Mitch Trubisky. Still is the kind of quarterback who can melt down in a game like this. And I think so the basic formula of the Bills defense is they've accumulated these corners, Russell Douglas and Christian Benford, who are big and they are built to kind of pounce downward. They're not built to turn and run. They know that. Sean McDermott knows that. But the Bills' pass rush, in theory, is supposed to intervene and force a quarterback to throw the ball before those receivers have enough time to run past Douglas or Benford. It's when you make Benford or Douglas turn and run downfield that they start to get out of their element a little bit. So it's not the Pittsburgh offensive line, in my opinion, that would be on the short list of offensive lines to throw off the Bills pass rush. Like, admittedly, I don't have a great feel for the Pittsburgh offensive line and its weak spots. It just seems like it's kind of like patched together.
Has there been much of like a narrative about Broderick Jones from the
not that I saw?
Done?
I still think the left tackle kind of sucks. I think he'd be better off at the right side or even at guard. But Jones at right tackle, I believe the last verdict was like he's an upgrade over what they had. And being an underclassman offensive tackle, he's going to still be better. He's going to get better next year and the year after than he'll be this year. But I guess the Steelers, didn't have anything better right now.
Yeah, great Georgia Bulldog. So I was hoping he
was a good pick.
Well,
he was the kind of pick that they should have made like for years and had playing in place of Dan Moore or whatever that left tackle's name is. So yeah. Yep. Even a guy like Greg Rousseau, who doesn't have that many sacks this year, he has a lot of quarterback hits, and I think his past sack tendencies give us reason to believe he will get a hot streak eventually. So if that happens here, that would be really bad timing for the Steelers because I don't want to make it sound like they have no hope or something, because Josh Allen is unconditionally turnover prone. He will always be turnover prone. And when you're turnover prone, things can get kind of wacky. You could imagine, I guess, if guys like TJ Watt and Highsmith are getting involved, you might be a little
Watt's
more...
probably not playing though.
Oh, my bad. But yeah, so if Highsmith can't get to Allen, then Allen should be able to just sort of like buy time almost indefinitely. And the reason I think ultimately the Bills offense will be okay in this game, maybe not in the sense of like big yardage volume, but at least fine in the sense of points, is that I think the Steelers, if they keep doing what they've been doing, they'll put Joey Porter on Stephon Diggs. And I still have concerns about the Bills offense and their spacing, their whole theory of a passing game. But I think it would be a huge mistake if the Steelers put Joey Porter on Stephon Diggs. And you might say that, well, so you think it's a better idea to put Levi Wallace on Diggs? And that's not exactly how I feel, but kind of, because the specific issue here is not that Wallace is better at covering Diggs. He isn't. It's that Wallace can play badly without grabbing people all the time, and Porter cannot play well without grabbing people all the time. And Diggs is a unique category of route runner who will get you and your feet in the wrong direction at corner. And if you're not built in the feet, if you don't have the mindset to kind of just be able to flip your hips the right way and change, your footwork in response the right way, then Diggs will either dust you, or if you're Porter, as Porter has done against many lesser receivers, like every week Porter is holding and grabbing at people. Against Diggs, he might set some kind of record for like the most penalties had against a corner in a game.
Oh boy. So that's a bit of a concern for Pittsburgh, because I mean, again, like you said, objectively Porter, the best corner on that team, but at the same time, as far as a matchup concern against someone like Stephon Diggs, who I think Buffalo really wants to get going. I know fantasy managers out there are disappointed in the returns that they got from Diggs this year, but I still think he's a huge part of what could be their success this month. I guess my general read on this game is Pittsburgh's offense is too punchless generally, and I think we saw some glimpses over the last month that Josh Allen, when he's kind of going that Superman mode, and we saw it last week. We saw like a perfect kind of encapsulation, I thought, of Josh Allen, where the picks were so boneheaded, but like the plays he was making were the type of stuff that very few other quarterbacks, if any, are making right now. So that I think makes the Bills very dangerous. The way they've ended the season makes them very dangerous. So I think that the Bills kind of make this one a game that's, if you had to miss a game this weekend, this one's probably it, because I think that the Bills kind of smush them.
I still think that the Bills' offense is busted. So to me, the defense is the bigger part. But the basic issue for me is George Pickens downfield is how the Steelers have made big plays all year. And Deontay Johnson sometimes gives them underneath gains, and occasionally he can set up a double move downfield. But with these corners and with the pass rush being the way it tends to be for the Bills, Pickens isn't going to be a regular option unless he's something like 14 yards downfield. The range where Benford and Douglas aren't suited to turn and run to, that's where Pickens is able to hurt them, I think. But the pass rush probably gets to Rudolph before Pickens can get that far downfield. So either the Pittsburgh run offense goes crazy, or Deontay Johnson, I don't know, has like 130 yards on the other side, or it just kind of ends up being a lot of situations where I guess you're hoping for Mason Rudolph to make smart throws going through multiple reads, and that sounds bad. So the Bills pass rush has been hot pretty much all year, and I think that makes bad Mason Rudolph happen. And so I in a way don't even expect Josh Allen to need to do that much.
Yeah, Benford has been kind of a nice storyline for Buffalo this year, because obviously with Trey White going down and Matt Milano, obviously different position going out, you kind of figured that this Bills defense, it was maybe teetering a little bit, but Benford seems to have really been kind of a nice steadying presence in the back end for them.
I think it's mostly the pass rush, honestly, because like Benford, guys like him just they can only run so far. And Tre'Davious White was what the Bills had as the theoretical answer to a speed receiver, or number one receiver in general. It's like, we'll put White on that guy, and he can run downfield. So if they go downfield, don't worry, White's got it covered. And I still think Benford and Douglas, they cannot do those Tre'Davious White things. Like if they have to go downfield, they're just kind of in trouble. So it'll take a team that can handle that pass rush and can get more quickly down the field against the Bills defense, but the Steelers are just, the opposite of that.
So, yeah, I think the run game for the Steelers might really be important here because according to something called weather.com, heard of it, there are going to be winds of about 25 to 35 miles an hour during this game.
That hurts both teams somehow. I don't even know because Josh Allen can run, I guess. Maybe it hurts the Steelers more because if they're grounded, it's like Rudolph he's just handing the ball off that much more, whereas Allen can make a big play on the ground. But I don't know. I got to say, I don't like the sound of that for the Bills because I feel like wind like that, 20 plus, can just complicate things. And I think if you're the Bills, you don't want to complicate this. It's just straightforward. Like, make your basic run fits on defense. Make Mason Rudolph throw the ball on 3rd and 9. That will take care of everything right there, I think. But yeah, if Allen has to throw the ball like 35 times in 20 plus mile per hour winds, then I'm worried, like, is he throwing that much because one of those got intercepted and the Bills had to throw more to catch back up? Like, why is he throwing that much? This should be a game where the Steelers are just kind of toothless, either way, I guess. And if they don't have wacky stuff intervening, I don't know what hope they have.
Yep, that's kind of where I land on this one as well. And for your edification, the public is much more split on this one, I think, because the number is so big than in the Saturday games. 55% of the money coming in on Buffalo, again, opposed to 79% on the Browns and 72% on the Chiefs. We'll move on to the NFC side of the bracket. We've got the Packers. We've got the Cowboys. We've got the Cowboys 7.5-point favorites. McCarthy versus his former team. We've got Jordan Love making his first playoff start. I believe the last time that these two teams squared off in the postseason, Dallas, I think they might have been the 2 seed that year. But that was the crazy Aaron Rodgers to Richard Rodgers game, I want to say. But again, that's ancient history. I think it was like the 2016 season. But either way, we have the Cowboys as more than a touchdown favorite in this matchup. Do the Packers have a shot, given the way that they've played these last 2 weeks?
Well, it's not good for Green Bay that this is in Dallas, where it's like even Dallas's detractors this season have kind of framed their fallibility around, well, they're awesome at home, but on the road they suck. It's like, okay, well, in this case, they're at home, so there's not really much reason to think they're on letdown watch. It's like the Packers would have to take it from them without Dallas handing it over. And that seems to me like a lot because Dallas just run game aside, I think has the Packers beat in every unit of personnel. I think Jordan Love has actually turned a corner in the past couple months. I mean, I hope it's safe to say that. It would suck if he kind of got adjusted to and stumbled down, but Love has played really well lately. And, me being a Bo Melton truther, I actually am inclined, and you being a Dontavian Wicks truther, I'm actually inclined to believe that the Packers offense will keep throwing the ball well. It's just giving those guys consideration while also keeping in mind the Dallas pass rush is difficult. And the Packers offensive line doesn't seem very good to me. I mean, I don't understand that left tackle rotation thing they do. Anytime I'm reminded of Zach Tom, it's because it's usually like something weird and bad is happening. And like, these are the guys that are going to have to deal with this Dallas pass rush. It seems kind of bad. I will say Jordan Love, part of what has made him so interesting and impressive lately is he's managing the pocket about as well as almost anybody. And he's starting to do that thing. I know it's not quite the same level of it, but he's almost kind of doing that thing that Ben Roethlisberger used to do all the time, where it's like he's making these big plays in large part because he's extending them and just keeping his eyes down the field. And what I mean is, like, it's not even so much that he's like breaking tackles the way Roethlisberger would. It's like he's just keeping his eyes downfield and managing the rush at the same time. And some of these plays to these receivers aren't on plays where they got open within structure and got the ball thrown on a read. It's like Love is improvising a little bit, and they're all working really well together this way. Melton and Christian Watson, if he's available, those guys specifically have the speed to get past Gilmore and Bland. If you can get like 2.5, 3 seconds, those two can run past those corners. The challenge against Dallas is much as it is with the Bills. It's like, but can your receivers get that far before that pass rush gets to your quarterback? And Dallas all year is banked on the answer being no. In the games where the answer is yes, things can kind of get sketchy because Bland and Gilmore can't actually cover that well. So there's a way, I think, LaFleur, if he has one of his gem game plans, which he does have sometimes. There are some games where LaFleur is so on that it's just kind of like he alone has the Packers competitive in a game. And I would say LaFleur is a better offensive coordinator than Dan Quinn is a defensive coordinator. So I definitely want to give LaFleur serious, respect and consideration here. But I think the way it needs to happen is making something happen kind of like what Joe Brady did with the Bills. And that game, they kind of just caught Dan Quinn for 4 quarters in a row, calling these plays that did not respect the run at all. It was all one gap stuff. It was all blitzing, trying to catch Josh Allen running the wrong way. And they just kept giving the ball to James Cook. They kept Ty Johnson even just kept being nobody there. LaFleur sometimes cooks up good stuff in the run game, and Aaron Jones, I mean, I guess he's probably not quite what he used to be, but I'm a big Aaron Jones fan. So if James Cook can have a game like that, then I personally can imagine Aaron Jones having one too. You'd have to be doing this kind of like from behind, or your defense would need to be stopping the Dallas offense, and that part is really tough to see good for the Packers, because the Green Bay defense just when they're not playing the Vikings anyway, they look pretty bad.
Right, exactly. So that's the big concern to me, is just are the Packers going to be able to create a turnover or two and just kind of keep a general lid on CeeDee Lamb?
I don't think they can.
And therefore the rest of the offense, and I don't see that. So I think I'm with you there that the Packers should be able to score here, but I think there will be enough kind of like havoc-induced plays from the Cowboys defense to kind of snuff some drives out for Green Bay, whereas Green Bay probably doesn't have that on their side of the ledger. The over-under in this game is 50.5. I do like the over here, even though it's obviously one of the higher ones of this entire weekend. But again, I think this will be not quite a defense optional game, but I think both offenses kind of have their way here. But the Cowboys defense makes enough plays to win this game. I do like the Packers to cover if you can get it at 7.5. At 7, it's a different question, but of like the underdogs that like to cover but not win this weekend, it is probably Green Bay.
Yeah, that could be true. I have trouble thinking this one through, in part because I feel like the game courses that this could take, there's like a wide range of scoreboard outcomes with them. Like if Green Bay tries to just air it out, I can imagine it going badly, sacks, turnovers, and then Dallas can really pull away with a big spread. But if I could have the assurance that Matt LaFleur considers Aaron Jones a priority in this game, then I could be persuaded to the Packers covering.
Okay. All right. Make a note of that. Anything else to add to this one before we move on to the afternoon?
Not really. I mean, I'm expecting a huge game from CeeDee Lamb, and then basically however much they need from Ferguson or Cooks, they will look for in Dallas. But yeah, the Packers, I really think they need to do it by getting Aaron Jones to get Dan Quinn in that spot that he was in Buffalo. And if you can get Jordan Love throwing the ball from a tied game, that's when you're really cooking. But yeah, if you got to just air it out with CeeDee Lamb doing track meet stuff, I don't think that's really fair for almost any quarterback given the pass rush they'd be going against.
Yeah, exactly. And them knowing and Dan Quinn sending everybody that could unravel pretty quickly for Green Bay. Let's hit the Sunday nighter. We got the Rams, we got the Lions, we got Matthew Stafford versus Jared Goff. We got the Lions' first home playoff game since 1993. Been a little while. Yeah, exactly. Shout out our guy, Pat, who's a big Lions fan. But, I mean, the football gods really drew this one up, right? Because, you got Stafford returning, the Rams looking like that proverbial team in the NFC that nobody wants to play right now. We're looking at the Lions as 3-point favorites, but 77% of the money pouring in on Los Angeles.
Yeah, fair enough. I have trouble picking a side here because, both teams look good, more or less. And the team that has the better structure in place and the home field advantage has a big deficit at quarterback, in my opinion. Like, I know there's a certain line of scholarship that posits that running backs don't matter and Jared Goff is better than Matt Stafford, but I think those people are wrong and that Stafford is actually the better quarterback of the two. So that makes the Rams pretty dangerous, but I do wonder about this Detroit defense, which I think is overall pretty weak. I wonder if it might overachieve a little bit against this Rams offense. It's the kind of thing where we also got to keep in mind Sean McVay and his ability to kind of come up with one-off game plans. That's definitely something that could throw in a wrinkle here. But both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp have generally gotten their targets, the vast majority of their targets in the part of the field where the Lions corners are most comfortable. I'm not going to say it's quite the same as, the Bills defense or whatever. But in both cases, you do have a theme of these corners can't cover downfield, but we're hoping we can kind of just money ball it anyway and just make the quarterback get rid of it before then or scare them away from the deep ball by some other means, whatever. But the Lions understand that Jerry Jacobs and Cam Sutton can't just do one-on-one drills against Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua all day. So what generally you try to do with corners like that is you give them a bit of a cushion and you tell them, like, based on these reads, prepare to jump this route or be prepared to, track this guy over the middle or whatever. And you just hope that they sort of just guess right and that Stafford guesses wrong or just is a little off. And you hope that that corner is facing the quarterback and can intercept the pass. And that's a style of defense that seems to me, at least in terms of the regions of the field where they function, it seems like an effective counter to an offense like this. However, the Detroit corners are worse than the Bills ones, so that example isn't quite the same. And the Detroit pass rush doesn't really exist. So that also is an important way it's different. So if the pass rush is supposed to intervene for the Bills, then the Lions need a different plan. And I don't know if they really have one. I think it's just kind of like hoping that the corners sort of win the matchups in a gutsy way. What I worry about for the Lions is even if there's some kind of collision here between what the Rams usually do and the few strengths of the Detroit defense, McVay might be able to find a way to recreate the dynamics of a downfield attack, but just going horizontally, especially because the pass rush isn't there. If Stafford has like another 2 seconds to throw the ball, that doesn't mean Cooper Kupp can run a fly route any better, but he might be able to set up more ambitious pick routes or like crossing routes across the field to create the space that they don't have the speed to create vertically. So I think if it must come to that, Sean McVay might already have an idea of how to do it. And so that's, for instance, why I'm going to be calling this a matchup upgrade for Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, even though the Lions are at their best in the parts of the field where Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp get most of their usage. I just think McVay is prepared to do some kind of pivot. I don't know what it is exactly, but he should have the luxury of it, if only unless the Detroit pass rush is more lively than I'm projecting here.
Our guy Anthony chimes in that Hutch getting home is the way for
sometimes it happens.
It does. He's got the cool war paint. Michigan just won the national championship this week. Maybe a little extra gas.
That means he gets a stats boost. Yeah,
I believe so.
STR is +1 because of the alma mater success.
I think that's how it works. Pretty sure. But on the Lions side, they're playing in a game last week where there was a fringe possibility of them being able to move up to the 2 spot. So they kept their starters in. Sam Laporta gets hurt. How much does that change what this offense looks like in your mind?
Well, it hurts. I don't understand really the criticisms of Campbell though, because if Dallas had lost and the Lions had lost after sitting their starters, those same people would have been calling for Campbell to get fired, in my opinion. So if you actually lose playoff seeding while resting your starters, it's one of those things that you can't justify, even if there is something of a case. It's like no one's going to listen to you. So I thought it was a lose-lose for Campbell. The Laporta injury sucks though, because he plays every snap for them. Like it's kind of interesting. Obviously, you remember the flash plays with Laporta. You see the volume, all the really good numbers. It's easy to miss how much he's out there just doing stuff for other people too. It's like he's out there blocking every play that he's not running a route. He's out there blocking. He doesn't get any time off. I think as a receiver, James Mitchell might actually be pretty good, or at least I've
I do too.
Had a bit of a truther thing with James Mitchell going back to Virginia Tech, yes. So I think he might be surprisingly dangerous as a pass catcher, but I suppose Laporta must be good at some aspect of blocking that's important to this offense. I don't know enough about that stuff. I assume Mitchell is not quite on that level, and
so you probably just have Brock Wright do that stuff.
Is that guy still hurt? He had been missing some time.
Be.
He is, in general, they're blocking. Okay, he's back. So, yeah, Brock Wright is probably going to lead them in snaps at tight end. I think you'll see both of those guys play quite a bit. But, yeah, 35 snaps for Wright. Vast majority of those is going to be blocking, I think. And I guess I haven't looked lately on how much they've had Mitchell blocking. He hasn't played enough for me to get a sense of what the change in circumstances might mean for reevaluating Mitchell's workload. Like, it's one thing to notice what he does like off the bench in a game where Laporta gets hurt, but with a week of practice, the Lions might have some different designs in mind. But I think Mitchell can step in. I think the Laporta being out shouldn't hurt the run game or the pass blocking to any particularly notable extent. So if you're the Lions, same as pretty much any week, the way you win here is by choking out this defense with your offensive line and your ability to run at volume and with explosiveness. This kind of spacing and this kind of budgeting of an offense is what suits Jared Goff in general. And without Laporta, it's made that much more the case. It's like you might be able to shoot it out a little bit more with Laporta, but even if so, let's just say St. Brown has like 120 yards here. I don't know how much you see for like Josh Reynolds. Maybe let's say another like 50. If you're trying to get to something like 240 yards with Goff, it gets sketchy without Laporta. Even though I do think it's worth noting this, I think this is a play they should specifically try to set up. They set it up last week with Khalif Raymond against the Vikings.
Yes,
they need to get Jamison Williams downfield against Darian Kendrick. Sorry, John. Sorry on both counts, because torching Bulldogs is the theme with him, isn't it? So
it sure is.
Darian Kendrick, you can't outrun Jamison Williams. He's found you again. I'm hoping that Ben Johnson gets that cooked up, because you might.
I want to say that was the exact matchup when Jamison Williams hurt his knee in the national championship game.
Yeah, it might be part of why we thought Williams was so fast, though, because Kendrick, it turns out he runs like a 4.7. So maybe Jamison is merely like a 4.4 flat rather than a 4.3 flat. He might be a 4.3 flat, though. I still like Jamison Williams. I worry about Goff getting the ball to him, but I think if you're running well enough on this defense, with the amount of help that those corners need, you either concede the run game to Detroit and let them kind of just take however much they want, or you go away from your nature and you leave those corners without the help you've been giving them. I can't remember who it was a couple weeks ago, but somebody roasted Akello Witherspoon really badly, and he's the one who can run a lot faster between himself and Kendrick. So Jamison Williams against those guys, you get the play action post setup against a big personnel, like a, I don't know, 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1 kind of thing. You might have Jamison Williams open with Darian Kendrick out of frame. Like, it could be that bad.
Yeah, so I think I'm disagreeing with the public here. I like the Lions in this setup. I think that even with Laporta unlikely to be available, I think that there's enough on that Detroit offense, like you said, with the run game, the offensive line, the speed element of JMO and Amon-Ra St. Brown just kind of moving the chains to where I think there's a slight bit too much public optimism on the Rams, expecting this to be the same old Lions. Again, like you said, McVay can obviously draw something up special here, of course, but I'm saying it's the Lions here. One pride. Let's go.
I don't feel strongly, but I'll pick the Lions. I think this could be a bit of a shootout. I just think Detroit has the realer run game. Neither defense is good enough for me to see a whole lot of danger there. The Rams, even at their best, don't really have a big play element. They kind of just chunk away at a defense. I think the Lions can do that without throwing the ball. The Rams, of course, have been running it a lot with Williams. I just think that the Lions can shoot it out on the ground more because they can give 15 to Gibbs and 20 to Montgomery. And if you try to give Williams 30 carries, I think you're going to break him eventually. I think they're going to break him eventually. In general, maybe not this week. So close game, but I just think that the Lions can kind of do more reps at the same task. I think it's just going to be an issue of depth and I don't know, the offensive line advantage, just creating so much space for the Lions to just kind of pick and choose what they want to do.
So this probably more applies if you're playing like a showdown DFS slate, but we did do a draft on XM this week for the overall postseason. It's not a advanced by week; it's just the overall thing. But you had to draft 2 tight ends. And Tyler Higbee's been hurt, so I counter your James Mitchell with what is probably going to be a dud here. Just to
sorry, John. The internet monster got you a little bit there for a second. I think all I heard was James Mitchell.
Okay,
what was before that?
Oh well, basically, I'm saying in a showdown type of format, keep an eye on Tyler Higbee's injury status because my sicko play from this one, I'm seeing your James Mitchell and I'm raising you one Davis Allen.
Oh, Davis Allen. Okay. I thought you were going to say Bryson Hopkins.
No.
Okay. Davis Allen. I will say he's a more complete tight end than Mitchell. He'll be out there for probably more snaps than Mitchell. But yeah, hell, I mean, those two guys could be necessary for cashing. You can pay for both quarterbacks, both big name running backs, whatever, with those kinds of savings, hopefully.
So that just throwing that out there, a little name to file away. I came away impressed. I think Higbee was unavailable against the Ravens, and Davis Allen actually looked pretty good in that spot, and he caught all of his targets last weekend as well. So I don't know. I got an eye out. Maybe that's more like a sicko DFS pick for next year, or a best ball pick for next year. But I digress. All right, let's round it out on the games before we get to some playoff best ball. Eagles, Bucks. Eagles 3-point favorites against your NFC South champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bucks at home. Obviously, in that particular setup. Anthony mentions that Donovan Peoples-Jones also a fun DFS. I can always
Raymond might be out, so that actually could be there.
I'd never need much talking into when it comes to DPJ. Like I think I'm like still stuck on his like freshman combine numbers from Michigan so many years ago at this point, but either way,
NFL combine numbers are pretty crazy too. I do think he's pretty good. I think the Browns just kind of sold him for nothing because they just kind of wanted to look at other projects instead.
Yeah, they wanted to look at David Bell or something. But either way, we've got the Bucks Eagles. The Eagles, can they get out of this tailspin? I think that's the big question.
Yeah, man, it's tough. It's difficult to remember any other instances where a team was in such a self-made hell as Philadelphia is currently, and the whiplash of it being in the same season where we're not even like, are we a full month removed from it being just kind of like, oh God, the Eagles will never lose again because of the tush push, and if we don't make it illegal, they'll just win forever, and it's not fair. And oh God, and now it's just kind of like the Eagles suck, and no one really seems to know why. I know there's some injury explanation, but that's not even like halfway to bridging the gap to me, between like what they should have done and what they've actually done lately. So to me, it seems like there's actual discord within the team building, or at the very least, maybe not discord. Maybe everybody's doing fine with everybody else, but everybody is confused anyway, and they don't really they don't know how to go about looking for the light at the end of the tunnel, let alone, actually getting themselves out. But to me, it seems pretty simply the case that the Eagles have kind of gotten themselves in a situation where they have been adjusted to, and they need to counter adjust. The way defenses always lost to them before was in part because of defenses choosing to line up certain ways, use certain types of personnel, use certain types of play calls. And since, a couple of years ago, whenever the Eagles were at their peak, defenses have had to spend more and more time, after the Eagles became the hunted, this defense is spending more and more time figuring out, like, how the hell do we stop this? And they have found some answers. And I think the Eagles have made it easier for the defenses to find those answers by just not having as good of a run game as they did last year, and then throwing too much, putting over exposure on Jalen Hurts as a passer, and even the wide receivers. It's like, unless you think AJ Brown's going to have like 2,000 yards and Devontae Smith is going to have 1,600, you have to come up with some fourth and fifth names for who's going to catch passes if you're going to be throwing it 40 times a game. You can't just like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, all catching like 100 passes. Like, it's not going to work. You need a CFL field or something, like a wider field for things to space that way in a way that's physically possible. And they don't really seem to this point to have any intention of grappling with that. They don't care what the material reality is. They have their thing that they want to do, and they're just doing it no matter what the results. So I think Sirianni is probably a good coach. I don't have much to say about the offensive coordinator, certainly Matt Patricia, but I think Sirianni will eventually, get things righted. I just don't know if it's right now that he can do it. There are so many things going wrong at once, and that's just as far as getting the team to play well. Who knows what kind of, slight mutinies are going on there after Sirianni pissed everybody off by demoting Sean Desai to put a pencil guy in charge of this defense. And of course, nothing got better. So now you just look like an idiot who's like throwing coordinators under the bus for these oafs that no one cared about, or on an oaf anyway, that no one already there cared about. It's a lot of mess. It's just a mess. And the Buccaneers aren't a good team, which is why I will pick the Eagles to win anyway. But it's I don't know. I don't know how I expect this game to look. I have just kind of this. It's like underpants gnomes sort of logic of just, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, ? Profit, and hopefully for their sake that's how it works. I don't know.
Do you know that the Eagles allowed the third most points in football this year?
I mean, it feels like they've been getting just their asses beat for like 2 months now. So It kind of sounds right.
They are. This is one of my like favorite stats that have been going around, and I'm not like a Philly hater or anything, but they are the only team to start 10-1 and not get to 12 wins.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's wild, because even that fake steal, that last hurrah from Roethlisberger when they went like 12-0 or whatever, like they're one of the worst playoff teams ever. Even they got to 12-0, dude, let alone 12-1 or 12 in any number. So yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of fires to put out while also having to deal with the playoffs. I think the number of fires they have to spend time putting out is not greater than the talent differential between them and the Buccaneers, but maybe I'm wrong to think that much even.
Yeah, I think the hopes of a Super Bowl run have been extinguished, but maybe the problems won't really be totally laid bare this week. Although I'm kind of thinking that the Bucs can pull this one off. They're at home.
Could. I mean, the Giants did, so.
Right? I mean, the freaking Cardinals did.
Cardinals.
I think that the vibes are that off for Philly. I think the defense is in that big of trouble. If Baker Mayfield is back to 100%, he did not look 100% last week. Gets the extra day of rest here with this game being on Monday night. You got Mike Evans, you got Chris Godwin, who's been rolling of late, and we'll unpack this more in the best ball discussion here in a minute. But I think Rachaad White is a nice little X factor in this one. I think the Bucs defense is solid but unspectacular. It's got some playmakers at pretty much every level. We've talked about over the course of this season, and especially during the Eagles' cold stretch, that they abandon the run, and they expect Jalen Hurts to basically be an air raid quarterback, which he is not. If they play to those defensive strengths for the Bucs, this game gets a lot closer than Philly fans and Philly bettors alike would like to see.
Yeah, I will say, I think despite all their various issues, the Eagles' run defense should be able to show up here. Rachaad White's been a really good fantasy player. He's not good, though, as a pure runner. I think he'll settle in eventually as more of a 1B kind of back who does more as a pass catcher, where in that capacity, he should do well in this game. The Eagles have given up quite a few targets to running backs of, I guess you'd say it's like at least league average efficiency that they've conceded with that 107 targets in 17 games. But the run defense, to me, Rachaad White needs to be closer to James Conner before I give him the benefit of the doubt. Like James Conner against the Eagles, it's like, all right, guy like him, maybe he can get it done. But I think White is a lesser back. I think the Eagles' run defense tightens up here. And so I think the Buccaneers need to be careful, too, about how much they make Mayfield throw. If Mayfield needs to throw the ball more than 30 times, it's like all those problems that I just talked about with Hurts apply to Mayfield at that point, and they'll look worse when they apply to Mayfield than when they do to Hurts. So the Buccaneers need to find a way to maybe make the game a little shorter than the Eagles usually want it to. And, don't turn the ball over. Get field goals when you can, little stuff like that. If you keep the game from getting out of hand, the Eagles, I do think they just can't resist getting to that 40 plus pass attempts. And when you make Hurts go through the order the third time, and like he starts giving up hits.
I love the pitching analogies with
it's exactly
Hurts.
The same principle. The number of pitches that a pitcher can present to a group of batters determines or influences how many times those batters can see him before they start to figure it out and start mashing you, even if they look stupid the first 2 times.
Bingo. So to recap quickly before we move on over to best ball, if I'm picking the games against the spread this weekend, give me the Browns, give me the Chiefs, give me the Bills, give me the Packers, give me the Lions, and give me the Buccaneers. So chalk in the or chalk favorites in the AFC, and I like the underdogs for the most part. Well, I guess Lions aren't the underdog, but the public says that they are. So that's where I'm leaning.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I really care about from this playoff round is I would like it to be Campbell time. I think he has proven himself. He doesn't need like more in his favor or whatever. But I think there's like a subsection of football media fandom that want to withhold credit to a guy like Campbell because he doesn't play to their conventions or tell them how special they are and how much they need to be listened to as analysts or consultants or whatever. And I want them to suffer even more than I want Dan to do well. But I want Dan to do well too.
Hard not to love Dan Campbell. That's been the case, since his little interim run with the Dolphins to the Hard Knocks to start his career with the Lions. The guy's just hard not to root for a guy like that. Let's go ahead, transition as we close the show, talking about playoff best ball. So we'll start with kind of a larger, broader overview. How do you go about both figuring out this format and contest selection and what generally, explain what exactly playoff best ball is relative to your normal best ball?
Well, yeah, all I've looked at is underdogs. I guess you'd call them tournament formats. Perhaps there's other game formats where you can go like week by week or something like that. I don't, sorry, as in like 1 week at a time kind of thing. With the tournaments that Underdog is running, it's more like, DFS tournament logic. There's a big pot of winnings and it's not easy to get to it. In part because you need to advance each week. So I can't remember it's like a 6-team league is what you start with. I think it's the top 2 advance to the next round. So you don't need to be first every week until later on, but you do need to finish at least in the top third of the first week to get to the second week. And then it's something like you got to be like top 8 or something like that to get to the third week. So it's a high wire really difficult act of balancing short-term competitiveness, the ability to place on the top 2, the top whatever, to get to the next round, and then have enough bullets left in that subsequent round to compete in that one. And I don't know the game theory. I don't know if there's like an optimal game theory approach to it. I feel like it's kind of a noisy contest format in that so much depends on the draft slot that you start with and the behavior of the other people in the draft. And you could imagine some guy in your draft like loading up on wild card players because he just wants to win the first week, thinking like, whatever, I'm still alive, I got a shot. And the realistic the reality for a lot of the people who will try this, like, you don't have a shot. You burned your 1 week. You sandbagged someone else in your league who might have had a viable week 2 or week 3 roster, but all you really did was kind of like knock them out. So it's tough to balance that, and you're going to need a little luck. There's a possibility, for instance, that you just plain old need either CeeDee Lamb or Christian McCaffrey to be like cashing in the final round. And if you aren't high enough in the order, which is to say first or second, then you can't get either of those guys. So, vast majority of drafts anyway. So, what you have to do, despite the icky feeling and the actual, not just seeming, the actual shortage of alternatives and like control that you have, you kind of have to, if you want to place in like the Super Bowl round anyway, you have to do stacking, and you have to just pick a team, 2 teams, I guess you'd say, to go to the Super Bowl, but also have some teams playing in the wild card round. So I guess you might think of like a wild card stack, wild card round stack of one team or whatever. Maybe one guy that you think might get eliminated, but might get you to the next round more safely, something like that. And then you're going to want a Super Bowl projected team. So, if just because Christian McCaffrey goes first, you're at second or third, that doesn't mean you're out on the 49ers stack, but it's harder for you to do. And that other person's probably pursuing it too when their pick comes back. So, you got to sort of look at how the market is shaping up in your draft. Try to guess, not too much, I guess. You got to keep yourself on your toes, but try to guess the way the other people are going to draft based on the players they're already drafting, and find an actual path where you can put together the necessary stacks to both compete in the short term and, in the event that team advances, compete in those rounds. So you can't go, you don't want to go stacking, for instance, like, I don't know, too many teams that are in like conflict with each other. Like if I guess a person could justify like, I'm making an Eagles Dallas team because the Eagles are just going to roll the whole way or something. And I just feel okay with that. But generally it's like, you'd want probably somebody that isn't going to play that team as your other picks, with some exceptions.
Right. At least, like not until a conference championship round. And it's good to kind of like spread your, I think one path that I've kind of considered is loading up on one team from one conference and then kind of spreading it out a little bit more across the
yeah,
other
you can
one.
Spread out the wild card round. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and to your point on going for guys that can give you the short-term returns to kind of get you to the next round without maybe necessarily expecting them to be there in the Super Bowl. I think Rachaad White does fit that bill for me because I feel like he still goes later than he should. And I think he's going to have a good game for fantasy regardless. Maybe you consider it more on DraftKings where it's full point PPR, but I feel like he's going too late is one of my like kind of observations from the best ball market so far. But, beyond that, I think that you really summed it up well there. I think going ahead and kind of drafting to a narrative definitely makes sense in this particular format. You've got less teams, you've got less teams to compete against, and you say, hey, I think the Browns are going to make a run to the Super Bowl. And you go ahead and kind of structure the AFC part of your roster accordingly. You get Flacco, you get David Njoku. It's, theoretically an attainable stack. You're not having to have the first overall or second overall pick to get those types of guys. But that's kind of the main takeaway for me is just like, you gotta kind of put your chips in where you believe that the highest probability can happen.
Sorry if I can interrupt. Realistically, if you're looking at these types of contests as more than like a scratch off level kind of seriousness, you'd probably need to do multiple drafts so that you can get a shot at pretty much all of the slot areas. And then you don't need to ask yourself so much like, what do I believe will happen, as much as you're forcing yourself to ask like, what is possible to happen from here. And when you don't make yourself, when you don't have to believe what you're picking from, it's a little easier to like see it as, I guess, maybe like an objective, cold calculation. And it's like if your pick, if your slot doesn't let you in on the 49er stack, you just go like, all right, well, the hell with it. Then I'll pick some other team and throw my lot behind that because they're the best. They're the only one that I even can pick where I am picking from. And like, hopefully you get sort of like a fair combination of shots between them. But yeah, it's like in one off, you're kind of it's a sort of a drop in the ocean kind of thing.
Yep, exactly. And I'm looking at the projected points. I did a entry on the Mitten this morning, and yeah, it's interesting. Like that, there are teams, myself included, not to pump my chest too hard, that are projected above 300, and then there's a couple that are projected under 200 for their total points in this tournament. So that goes to show that I think, to your point, draft slot can definitely matter a lot. I actually had the first overall pick in this one. I'll just run through it very, very quickly. I have McCaffrey. I picked Dak Prescott with my next pick. Isaiah Pacheco, Patrick Mahomes, Justice Hill, Rashee Rice, Jake Ferguson, Odell, Jaden Reed, and you're gonna hate this one. I even hate this one, but Demarcus Robinson with the last pick. But
he could help you in the first 2 weeks, I guess.
I think so. I mean, potentially. Although I do, again, as we've talked it through, I do like the Lions this weekend. But that was the build that I came up with.
For the Rams that way.
Yeah, I think so. Beyond that, I don't know. There's some guys with the underdog badges out there that went with the Buffalo stack. One of them did. He's projected to do pretty well. And would you recommend potentially just going one quarterback in this type of format?
That's the extreme version of the tournament logic, right? Like, you're giving up the durability for the chance to get the highest upside possible. You're assuming that Josh Allen in this case will win each round to get to the Super Bowl, have high point totals, and that's another bullet you can put toward your running backs, receivers, tight ends. So it makes sense, but when you're planning it that way, you either A, have to be resigned to the scratch off kind of odds you're going with, or B, and I imagine this is what this person is doing, do a bunch of drafts so that you can game a bunch of scenarios, and you're taking on risk, sacrificing durability to go with one quarterback instead of two. But if you burn 99 losing teams for the sake of cornering the odds on this one quarterback loadout that actually is like, it's a narrowest of paths, but it is probably going to come down to a narrow path, then the windfall of winning or placing high enough anyway in a tournament like this can kind of eat through the expenses. But not everybody has the ability to put up that kind of money toward things. So if you're going in with like a whatever, they have a $5 contest, I think, the Mitten or whatever. You don't have to do like the high dollar one. So you'd have to probably be planning on doing like at least, God, I don't know, like at least 5 teams, and sort of keep track of your exposure and see specifically what storylines your wagers are betting on, so that where your liabilities are and what sort of what outcomes you don't have any sort of what do you call it, like equity in or whatever. Like if you don't have any Bills teams and you found like, oh, I've done 10 Mittens drafts and I don't have any Josh Allen teams, like, well, since you're in this much, maybe do an 11th or something.
Right. Exactly. So we've been over the X's and O's. Let's get into the Jimmies and Joes a little bit. Let's go position by position. I guess we'll narrow the focus to like 2 quarterbacks and or 2 for each position that you do want to target, and then 2 that maybe being drafted a little bit higher than what your interest level is. So 2 guys that you would probably fade at their ADP for we'll start with quarterbacks.
Well, since this is so stack dependent, since you need to have 4 or 5, whatever the number is, active players in the Super Bowl round, pretty much anything is permitted, especially when it comes to theoretical high upside cases like Josh Allen. Like I don't particularly think the Bills are good enough to be ranking Allen as high as he is in the ADP right now, but there's a certain market for a Buffalo Bills stack in this game, and you either pay that price, whatever it is, or you don't get any Josh Allen exposure. So in the sense of covering all probabilities, it's truly the case. Like almost anything is permitted, justifiable in such a directionless kind of calculus for this kind of game setup. But I think I don't know. I was struck by the Browns a little bit, honestly. Like Flacco, Jerome Ford, even Cooper were all pretty cheap. At least when I posted the article a couple days ago, and maybe things have already changed. If only for the enduring observation that the Texans were the underdog. Maybe that has changed somewhat. But yeah, I think those guys. I guess as much as like spreading around the wild card round a little bit, like you were saying, makes sense. I kind of like the idea of a team like the Browns as like my wild card stack, and not that I need them to make the Super Bowl, but ideally something like Browns 49ers or something. And if those guys stay low enough in the order, then a team that's first overall and gets Christian McCaffrey might be able to get if they're going one quarterback and they have just Brock Purdy, fine. I still like Ford, I still like Cooper, and yeah, those guys I like. I thought, even though things suck with the Eagles, and even though I basically think they're kind of like frauds or something at the moment, those prices have gotten so low that I think they're in the exact position now that the Bills ADP was a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, Hurts was where the Bills are, and the Bills are where the Eagles are. So if, not that I have any idea how it's supposed to happen, don't get me wrong, but if the Eagles somehow do regain the nature that they displayed for the first 12 weeks or whatever, then it's just like they're, the exact same logic applies to the Eagles as the Bills at that point. And now is the time, I guess, to buy that sort of ticket. Hopefully you didn't buy it in the first couple weeks that the contest was running, when, again, the ADP for the Eagles was very high at the time.
No, exactly. So it's crazy how quickly things have changed. Let's see here. And then moving on to, or does that pretty much cover your interests for quarterback? Anyone else that we need to touch on there?
Not to any degree where I'm like having hard line opinions. It's kind of like with something like this, it really is so wide open that you can kind of justify anything, because unless you could tell someone like this is impossible, then it's justifiable, and there's not that many things that are truly impossible.
There we have it. Onward to running back. So McCaffrey kind of in a class of his own, of course. I think in your article you give a good ADP snapshot in addition to the rankings, and you'll see McCaffrey basically not varying from being the first overall, occasionally going second, but he's the guy. Then you're going to have to wait, basically until like the start of the third, maybe last pick of the second, until you see another running back come off the board. That's Tony Pollard, Isaiah Pacheco, and Jahmyr Gibbs and Kyren Williams, kind of all lumped into a tier within like one pick of each other as far as the ADP is concerned. So if you don't have McCaffrey, who's your running back of choice?
So the running back market outside of McCaffrey is pretty weak, in my opinion, to the point that I almost struggle to think of how to implement the position in a Super Bowl theory stack. It's like, if you don't get McCaffrey, not that you can't pursue the 49ers stack, but you're not getting the best part of it for sure. Right. And don't get me wrong either. Guys like Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason are perfectly justifiable, end game picks in a format like this. But as far as an actual, maybe you just have to go zero running back if you don't get McCaffrey, because it's like guys like Tony Pollard, Isaiah Pacheco, they have a certain amount of theoretical, utility, but Pollard was kind of a dud all year. Pacheco has one, in theory, good matchup, and then I personally don't feel very good about the Chiefs. So if I'm paying a top 20 pick for a running back, I'd like to think he can play for me in the conference championship or Super Bowl, and I personally don't feel that way about Pacheco. It's like the most productive guys are on teams that we worry might not advance, like Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyron Williams, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert. These are some of those guys were at the high end of the ADP a couple of weeks ago too, and the Miami guys especially have fallen lately. James Cook has gained lately. I gotta say, I think I shouldn't even comment on that. I understand that the ADP on James Cook is so high now because of people specifically pursuing the Bills stack. I know they're not asking the question, or they're not answering the question of like, which running back do I think is the best? They're just, I'm trying to pick Bills. So I understand that he goes at 17.9. But man, that strikes me as a bad value personally, because the background here is that I am worried about the Bills after the Pittsburgh game, just as I am worried about the Chiefs after the Dolphins game. So if the Bills play enough games, then that obviously that concern would solve itself. But I don't know. I feel like for the wild card round, I'd almost give a higher point projection to Jerome Ford. So I guess I still don't know what to do as far as the Super Bowl. Maybe I'm just taking Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason and hoping one of them gets me some points in the Super Bowl round. But it's like, I don't even know what other team I should focus. I guess the Ravens, but it kind of feels weird chasing Gus Edwards and Justice Hill of all people too.
Right. So, I mean, maybe they are like the right 0 RB picks though by that same token.
I guess in combination, you can do something like Rashad White, Aaron Jones, guys like that are cheap enough. Devin Singletary, maybe, that they can get you wild card points with the off chance that they do advance, and you kind of have your cake and eat it too. And then in the later parts of the playoffs, maybe not because of McCaffrey getting hurt specifically, but maybe Elijah Mitchell has a 40-yard touchdown in the Super Bowl, and that's all you needed or something.
No, exactly. And then, on the Ravens front, I don't really know what to make of Dalvin Cook's role. I wouldn't pick him any more than my last pick in a given draft. But Edwards, I think he has the touchdown ability, and Hill, regardless of how I feel about him as a talent, he definitely plays a lot of snaps.
Last week. I have to give him that. That was pretty easily the best game he's ever played.
Yeah, so he's looking better, especially as a guy who tore his Achilles a couple of years ago. Like, for him to still be kicking around and actually, having a big role on a team like this, I think is pretty impressive. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I do think that Rashad White projects reasonably well, and I think he can have a good game this week. And again, I think the Bucs have a good chance at actually doing this thing. And if you get 2 games out of Rashad White, obviously it'll probably be a tougher matchup in the divisional round, or maybe the game script would get away from them. They'd be much bigger underdogs in that spot. I don't know. They could still, there's still room open for him to contribute as a pass catcher. So I think he is the value that stands out to me. I like your calls on Aaron Jones though, and a couple guys a little bit further on, and then we'll wrap up with the pass catchers. Your guys that you need, and maybe some guys that you're fading at ADP.
Well, the fact is the 49ers, even more than the Bills, are the most coveted stack. So Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, I've got them ahead of Tyreek Hill. At the time that I was posting it, I was like, is that too aggressive? And after talking through things today, especially, I think it was not too aggressive. There's enough concerns about the Dolphins being a one-off that is not particularly productive, that Tyreek Hill is a bit of a tough call at 7.1. Brandon Ayuk, I think, and Samuel both give you a lot more security and not necessarily at lower upside given the circumstances. However, CeeDee Lamb is the top receiver because he's just kind of like the wide receiver version of McCaffrey right now, where he's in a weekly 30-point category and on a team that is expected to play. It's not nothing either that the Cowboys play this week. The 49ers are going so high with the bye week. It's Super Bowl utility that you're paying for in theory with the 49ers. With Dallas, there's a chance you get the best of both. And if Lamb is playing in every round of the playoffs, he will probably be on, it'll be like 90% CeeDee Lamb teams cashing at the final round or something like that.
Yeah.
But so anyway, George Kittle also, maybe I should put Kittle ahead of Tyreek Hill. I put him behind Hill. but I guess my reasoning would apply to him just as much. I don't know what to make of some of the guys after that, though. I feel like you might as well not have an opinion really, and just kind of go along with the stacks that you were theorizing based on, the ADP and your spot in the draft order, and you just have to kind of just execute the vision once you commit to it. But like I said, I'm concerned about the Chiefs advancing further than this one game. So guys like Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, maybe I had them ranked too low, but for instance, I had them both behind AJ Brown. It's the same thing as I was saying about Jalen Hurts. Like, I have no idea how the Eagles fix this mess they've gotten themselves to. It's just that if they somehow do, AJ Brown going at 17.5 is like a slate breaker, So him and Devontae Smith. So maybe even Goddard to some lesser extent, where I really have trouble taking a decisive stand. And this is why rankings like this is so difficult. I can see someone looking at my rankings and be like, you're low on Amon-Ra St. Brown and the Rams receivers. Why is that? I'm not. I'm high on both of them. I just can't tell which of them won't be allowed to play after this week. So if you're committing to a Rams stack and you're ranking Kupp and Nakua more like top 5, you should, to be clear. That makes a lot of sense. I'm only putting them this low because I have to kind of keep splitting hairs about, short-term utility versus long-term security and upside and things like that. And particularly with the stacking element of a tournament like these, it is fair to have a wide range of conclusions or valuations.
No, absolutely. And then I do have a decent amount. I haven't done like a ton of these best ball drafts. I think I've done like 3, but I do find myself being cool with getting Rashee Rice, sort of dovetailing on what you said about the Eagles and what if they figure it out. What if this Chiefs offense, if Mahomes just kind of finds that level that we're so used to seeing from him, and then Rice being the top target for the Chiefs at this point, I think that there's some upside there, and maybe you get 2 to 3 games out of that pairing or out of Rice specifically. A little bit later on, I do like Isaiah Likely. I think he's a huge part of that Ravens passing game.
That's your cheap forward Super Bowl pick for the AFC. If you don't have like a great AFC stack, Isaiah Likely is a good way to get a stab at it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Preaching to the choir there. But those are pretty much my observations as well. Like, you get to the end of the draft, what we talked about earlier with Jameson Williams. If you have any optimism on the Lions, maybe he's someone to have a little bit of interest in, as well as like a late round flyer.
Yeah, and again, like especially if you're going in for a significant amount of volume, like the rules and truisms don't apply nearly as much in a contest like this. It's like last year. Think of how big that game in the playoffs was for Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and think of how he did nothing. He probably wasn't getting drafted half of the time before it. So there's a chance that major nobodies who regularly go undrafted are on a lot of cashing teams at the end of this all. Like there could be like somebody that makes like $100,000 or whatever because Josh Reynolds had 2 good games. It's so tough to rule things out.
Yeah, 100% there. So, I mean, this is as tricky of a format as we get, but it's still best ball. It's still a playoff. So, we love it all the same. And before we jump off, we do have a message from our friends over at FanDuel. Tackle millions in prizes all playoffs long with FanDuel fantasy contests. If you're new to fantasy, there's no better time to get in on the action because right now, new customers get a 100% deposit match up to $100. $100 deposit match, not bad. Playing fantasy for huge cash prizes on FanDuel is fun and exciting. Just draft your lineup, watch your team move up the leaderboard, and that's it. So this weekend, obviously, you have tons of slates to choose from over on FanDuel. You can play the Saturday-only slate. You can play the full slate, all 6 games ranging from Saturday to Monday. That's going to induce some good DFS sweats. I know, again, I've said it a million times that I'm going to be in, I think, on Rachaad White as a play. But I think beyond that, getting a lot of exposure to that Lions-Rams game gives you a little bit floor. But you are going to have to get a little bit off the beaten path with other ones to get the right amount of differential. Plus, on FanDuel, You can choose from full slate contests featuring multiple games, single game contests, season-long best ball contests, and beginner-only contests, which are great for learning the ropes and more. And when you win, you get paid instantly. So kick off football season with 100% deposit match up to $100. Go to FanDuel.com to start playing for huge cash prizes today. Mario, that is going to do it for us here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, breaking it all down from the coaching vacancies all the way to some playoff best ball and everything in between to get you ready for this weekend. If you haven't signed up at RotoWire and you want to check out our written content and all of our great rankings, projections, all that good stuff, check out our free trial. It's free for like 48 hours, I believe. No strings attached. RotoWire.com/pod. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.